Hi there, it's Nicole from Mama Elephant, and today I've got a Try Window Shaker card that features an underwater scene with the new Mermaid Kisses stamps and coordinating dies. These are super cute. Mermaids are all the rage right now, and these from Mama Elephant are really fun. Plus, there's plenty of coordinating images to really make fun underwater scenes. I'm going to use some of the new Distress Oxide inks to create my background here. The magic of these inks is there's pigment included in, it's a pigment dye ink, and when it reacts with water, it's going to give those great oxidized results. So I've put down Cracked Pistachio, Broken China, and Faded Jeans Distress Oxide inks on my craft mat, spritzed it with water, and then I've just pressed in a piece of Canson watercolor cardstock. And I'm kind of letting the ink just do what it wants here to speed up the drying process, and so I can layer on some more water droplets and stenciling and other things. I'm going to heat it with the heat tool. Not all the way, but most of the way dry. You can see as it dries, it gives that nice kind of oxidized, chalky type of finish. Along the edges, there's some water droplets. You can always dab those up with a paper towel or a rag or something like that. Most of those are not going to be seen anyway once I get the Try Window die over the top of it, so I'm not worrying about it. I'm going to clean up my craft mat now, and I'm going to take a distress sprayer and spritz water droplets all over the background, and then just dry this. And you can see it lightens up some of those areas. Just like regular distress ink reacts with the water, so does the Distress Oxide. So it's giving some great lighter splotches all throughout. I heated it up. I'm going to spritz it again. I thought it needed a few more in a few more places, and I'm just going to dry that as well. Really, really fun to play with, and I love this color combination together. It's one of my favorites. And just a little note too, I saw that Tim Holtz made mention that today he is going to talk about some new Distress Oxide colors that they will be releasing soon, so I'm super excited about that. Next, I'm going to take the Simon Says Stamp Waves stencil, lay it over my background, and going over the same sections with my Distress Oxide inks, I'm just going to layer over a little bit of the stenciling design to give that illusion of water. So again, the Cracked Pistachio, Broken China, and Faded Jeans Distress inks. I'm just kind of pouncing it over the stencil, not rubbing it over it. I don't want complete coverage. I just want to add another layer. Now that kind of gets rid of some of those water droplets. So again, I'm going to spritz it with water and then heat set that. You're not going to lose the definition of the waves, but you're still going to, or you're going to get back some of that distress look that is so great for the background. I'm going to heat that up again. This was one of those cards where the background was kind of the focal point, or what I worked on first, because I knew that I really wanted to get that right in order to make the mermaid scene really pop. I like to flip my paper over, dry it from the back as well. That's going to kind of help flatten it just a little bit too. So there's kind of what the background looks like. This is A2 sized. I think I forgot to mention that. So it's 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. Next, I'm going to take Broken China and Cracked Pistachio Distress paints, and I'm going to make a little paint palette here on my Ranger craft mat, a little Picket Fence distress paint as well for some nice white splatters. I'm going to water down the distress paints with a little bit of water from my distress sprayer, pick up the colors with my small paintbrush and kind of flick that or tap it all over the surface to give some distressed splatters. Then I'll pick up my Cracked Pistachio, fleck that kind of all over. Same thing with the Broken China. For this, I am going to let this sit and completely air dry while I work on the rest of the components, because there's quite a lot of coloring that needs to be done, plus that try frame needs to be inked up as well. Just like the background panel, I've die cut this from some Canson watercolor cardstock. I went ahead and put my Distress Oxide inks on my craft mat, watered them down, and then pressed my frame into those. It's going to give a very, very similar look. I'm going to follow almost the exact same steps as the background because I really want it to be a cohesive looking card. The only thing I'm going to do a little different is instead of stenciling that waves stencil over the top, I'm just not going to do that for the front cover. That's mostly going to be in the background. Here I'm using a paper towel to blot some of those areas that are remaining really wet. I'm picking up a little more ink from my craft mat. I purposely did not wipe up that ink yet because I knew there were some light areas on the front of my frame that still needed some ink and I didn't want to have to make more. Once I have that, I'm going to dry it again. Your heat tool really is your best friend with this kind of technique so that you can keep moving quickly and keep working and getting that background just the way you want it to look. I'm spritzing it with water from the Distress sprayer now, and I'm just going to keep drying it. You can see those areas where the water droplets have landed have lightened the card in certain places. That is exactly what I'm looking for so that this really coordinates nicely with that background that we just created. I'm going to do a few more water droplets. There's a couple areas that I didn't like very well. That's another thing you can do. If there's some areas that aren't quite what you want them to look like, spritz them with water. It's going to make that ink react, and you can move it around a little bit, maybe blot it dry, do a couple different things, and you can usually kind of fix anything that maybe you don't like or ink that kind of went haywire and went somewhere you didn't want it to go, and cover it up with another ink. Again, I'm flipping over my frame and drying the back. That's going to help dry this a lot quicker and maybe flatten it out just a little bit as well. And there is what the front of the shaker frame is going to look like. I love this tri-window die from Mama Elephant. I've used it a ton already. I can already tell this is going to be a very often used die. Now I had laid out all of my stamps that I kind of thought I wanted to use for the scene of the shaker card. I'm going to go ahead and grab those, pick those up with the Misty, and stamp them all at once with a black ink good for Copic coloring. This is a great thing to do when you're worried that the images may not have a really solid outline because you can stamp them one on top of another really easily and get that great perfect black outline that looks so nice. I'm going to go ahead, pick up all of my stamped images. I cleaned everything except, well, I cleaned everything, but I'm going to pick up a few more of those images and stamp duplicates. So more of the little school of fish, more of the seaweed, things like that. Just things that'll be great for scene building and that you can have duplicates of in the card. Everything here is colored with Copic markers. The colors I'm using are shown across the bottom of the screen. This first mermaid, I am using E13, 15, and 25 for the skin colors with a little R20 for the cheek to pinken it up. The second mermaid is E00, E11, and E13. Mermaids are super fun. I did kind of go with traditional, or not really traditional, I guess, but hair colors that you might see on other people images, but you could really go crazy and fun and do some fun things like purples or blues, pinks, all kinds of fun things with mermaid's hair. For all of the greenery seaweed images, I'm using YG 21, 23, and even a little YG 17. I think I need to pull in a little of that. I'll do that in a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and move over to the first mermaid's hair. The base color is YR 21. And then I'm going to feather in E19 and E15. This is a great color combination for kind of a reddish tone of hair. A lot of that YR21 gets covered up, and that you want that. That is only the highlight, so it's a nice base color, but most of it really isn't going to be seen. That E19 and E15 really are going to be the majority of the color here. Cute little stars in the mermaid's hair as well. Those are going to be colored with an assortment of the colorful markers I'm using for the rest of the scene. I'm going to go back over. I originally done that E19 here, but I felt like a lot of it kind of got blended out with the E15. So I went back. I like to go back and forth several times until I get the hair looking just the way I want. Her top is RV55. There's not a lot of it showing. So I only used one color or one shade per color for that. For her mermaid tail, this is also going to be in those great green colors, similar to what I used, or same as I used for the seaweed. YG21, 25, and then YG17 with some little dot detail here to make it kind of look like fish fins. And here I'll go in with YG17 and darken up the seaweed just a little bit. For the crab, I'm going to use our 24, 29, and 46. So super cute. I'm going to perch him on those rocks near the bottom of the shaker scene. For the coral, instead of doing reds, which I like to do a lot when doing an underwater scene, I decided to go with oranges since I have some red in other areas. I'm using YR04 and YR09. Color always makes a huge impact in an underwater scene like this, I think. Shows up really nice against the blues. I tried to stay away from blues and aquas when coloring in all of my images, since so much of those colors is used for the water. For the second mermaid's mermaid tail, I'm using RV00, 52, and 55. And I felt like 55 kind of got lost when I was trying to do the little dot detail, so I pulled in RV19 to darken that up just a little bit. I didn't actually use that color to color in anything, it's just for the little dots to give that the illusion of being fish fins. The rocks are colored in E43, 44, and 47. Very, very light. Again, this is another example of the light color not really being all that visible once you have blended with your other two colors, but it's a great base and gives some nice highlights. All of the fish are going to be colored with Y11, Y08, and Y19. The larger fish, there's only one of him, is going to have a little YR04 just to give him a little bit of difference from the others. I think the more fish, the better for this scene. In fact, I did stamp an additional school of fish, that little grouping of 4, for the finished card. Sometimes when you get to the end of the card, when you're putting everything together, you'll realize that you might need another image here or there. And that's what's great with a stamp set like this that has so many small images. There's lots and lots of things to choose from. The top on the second mermaid is in the same oranges I used for the coral, so YR04 and 09. For her hair, I decided to go black. When you're coloring black, you need to start light and build the color up. You don't want to start with a black marker because it will just be a solid blob of black and you'll lose all of that great shading and dimension that the rest of the images have. I am using C5 as my base color. Again, most of this will not be seen. There's just going to be small areas that will be the highlight. And then C7 and C9 are feathered in to build that hair color. The stars in her hair, again, an assortment of just colorful markers that I had laying out on my desk. The clamshell is going to be those same pink colors, RV52 and 55. And then the little pearl inside is going to be E40 with that E43 just really, really light to blend it out. And give it just a touch of color. It's not a lot, it's just a tiny, tiny bit. Once the coloring's done, I'm going to take the Coordinating Mermaid Kisses dies and die cut all of my images. Now I'm going to use a little scrap here of Post-it tape to hold my frame down over the background. My background has dried while I've done all of the rest of this work, and that's going to help me. I don't want to adhere it because it's going to be a shaker, but I need to have a guideline to know where to attach all of my images. So kind of starting at the bottom, because that's where the seaweed's going to go, that's where the rocks are going to go. Everything floated down to the bottom, but the fish and the mermaids are going to be floating out above. So I kind of started with the bottom down there, layered the images, and then I've attached my mermaids since they are the stars of this card. And then I'll add all of the supporting cast, which are the fish, the larger fish, the little individual fish images. And again, by laying the frame over the background, that really gives you a good guide so that nothing gets lost in between any of those little panels. Now I'm putting a nice strong adhesive on the back of my frame, and I'm going to just layer this over a piece of acetate. This is going to be the front of my shaker. And the greeting is going to be on the front so that it's going to be visible at all times. What happens here is each of these sections or windows is going to be its own shaker. So I don't want any of the shaker material covering up the greeting. I'm going to go ahead and put this in my MISTI again so that I can perfectly line up and stamp my greeting on that acetate window. And just in case it doesn't stamp perfectly the first time, which it didn't, with the StazOn ink, I can go ahead and reline that up and ink it again for a perfect greeting. On the back of the window, I'm going to put 2 layers of foam adhesive around all 4 sides plus those 2 dividers. And I've just doubled up this Scotch foam adhesive, and then I'm trimming it in half. And I forgot to pull the backing paper off of my acetate, so I had to remove that real quick. It comes off, the foam adhesive comes off super easy if you do forget. So I'm replacing each of these little sections. Like I said, they are each their own shaker window, so you want the foam adhesive to touch all the way around. I'm going to use a powder tool to make sure that the adhesive doesn't, or that the shaker material doesn't stick to the adhesive, hopefully. And then I will be filling the 3 little shakers with some little seed beads, clear little micro beads, things like that, great for underwater scenes. I can remove the backing paper from all of the little sections here, and then I'm going to take the shaker back with all of the images to the front of the shaker and attach this to a white top fold card front to finish the card design. Thanks for joining me today for this underwater shaker scene card featuring the Mama Elephant Mermaid Kisses stamps and coordinating dies. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Mama Elephant stamps and dies that you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.